I'll do my best to just stay the other way.
How'd you do that?
To be honest with you, go to bed early.
Where would you sleep?
In the trees. Underneath bushes. That way they couldn't ticket me. I got ticketed twice. And it was by two smart ones too. One because my dog barked, and the other one was because actually I dropped something. Yeah.
That year they had proposed an ordinance, and in fact had enacted an ordinance in the city of Salinas, which gave the authority to any city official could walk up on a person, and of course it was directed at homeless people, and immediately seize and destroy any item that they deemed to be dirty, broken, or in disrepair. That was the language of the ordinance. Mm-hmm. So we challenged it as being facially unconstitutional.
They made it a crime. It's a crime to be homeless.
Can you go more into that?
Monterey, I'm not really up to date on their laws, but a lot of their laws have been passed. It's been so it's illegal to be homeless. You can't park your car in a certain place for a certain amount of time because you'll get a ticket. You can't camp your camper in a certain spot for a certain amount of time because then you'll get a ticket. There's an unwritten law on curfew. If they see you walking around at a certain time, it's going to be a point of contact for the police. It's there's just so many laws that have been passed where it's difficult to be homeless. It's difficult to try to get out of a certain situation when you have so many things going against you. So that's why I give that statement. It's illegal to be homeless.
Most of these ordinances are what we call anti-camping ordinances. They're about their prohibition of camping, of putting up a tent, putting up any kind of shelter, of being on public property without a permit. In some cases, the ordinances permit cities to simply seize property belonging to homeless people. There's no due process. There's no opportunity to contest the seizure. Some cities have anti-panhandling laws where they prohibit people from standing on the street or standing in a public space or being in a public space soliciting for assistance.
Day and night, they were relentless. Yeah, they had been coming at me over and over and over in that parking lot. Sometimes writing me tickets. It really changed me when the police told me to pick up garbage in the parking lot that was not mine, just random street garbage. And then I said, this is degrading. He said, how is it degrading? Just mocking me.
The police contact here is always cookie cutter. They've never been about the individual. They're contacting a homeless person. But they've always been in a monotone approach, and it's always been assumption of drugs, assumption of being on probation, assumption of being on the run, so on and so forth. That's their first approach. So it's, of course, someone that's not on the run, that's not on probation, that doesn't use drugs, that's just down here, having bad luck, then of course it's going to be a negative contact. They're going to get all those assumptions thrown at them, and they're going to be really offended by that.
So the influence of the police department in the repression of homeless people and in the enforcement of laws that are designed to persecute homeless people and essentially run them out of town. Police departments are essentially playing that role. Occasionally we run into individual officers who are a little bit more mindful and considerate, but as an institution, the police are very much a part of this, what we call the war on the homeless.
I think law enforcement and patrol officers see and contact homeless people far more than any other stakeholder. So we have that face-to-face contact daily, weekly. We're able to build relationships. We're able to try to encourage. We really know a lot of times what's going on. We don't very often know why someone is homeless, but we see what homelessness has done to them, and we see how they're living. So we have a first-hand look I think, a lot of times where other stakeholders may not have that.
Commander Velaz, I don't know how long she's been there, but I know that she's been really pushing to kind of connect with people. Of course, they're police officers and their job is to enforce. So if it does come to that, they do that piece of the puzzle. But I do think with the new leadership we have in the police department, I want to say that I think that there's going to be some really good shifts and some changes and some community outreach involving students, homeless people, and just generally kind of making a community bigger and stronger.
We created what we called the HOT Project, Homeless Outreach Teams, and the teams were teams of officers on an overtime basis who would maybe approach homelessness a little differently than we have in the past in our community. We decided we wanted to educate, do some good outreach, really encourage the homeless to get help, whether that be some kind of help for an addiction problem or an alcohol problem, or reaching out to family that they hadn't seen for a long time, or getting medical help, really encouraging them to seek services that are available to them in the community. And then the last element of that was enforcement. We do have people in our community who are affected by maybe homeless, maybe causing problems in an area where they want to take their children. This happens from time to time. So instead of just going right in and trying to arrest homeless or have them move on, we wanted to take the approach that we would try to talk to and educate and really encourage them to get help.
I get along with them pretty good. Yeah, I cooperate and stuff. Things, yeah.
Would you get citations at all?
No, I try not to ever.
How do you go about doing that?
I just leave those things alone. Yeah.
One morning, before the sun came up, an officer found me, and I said, well, is it time for me to go? He says, no, just make sure you're okay. And that, I felt very nice about that concern, which is somewhat rare. Another time I was camping over, it's called the Red Church over by the Nickelodeon Theater. I just wanted to lay down and get a few hours sleep. And apparently some of those other folks that were not there for camping caused a little problem with the church people, and they had an officer come by and pretty much rowdy everybody out of there. So I saw this flashlight coming at me and showed my ID. He said, oh, wow, you're 70 years old. Yeah, I just not bothering nobody. They actually wrote me a camping ticket.
I think in years past, and maybe 20 years ago when I first started here, first of all, we didn't have the amount of homeless that we have now in our community. We maybe had, 15, 20 people. And as an officer, you knew them well. So when you contacted them, you usually just had them move along. If they were, for instance, drunk and disorderly, we would just arrest. We would cite for sleeping in a park according to our ordinances. There were services available, but I don't think the amount of services that we have available today. So I think we took more of an enforcement approach back then.
I think the way that we're moving now is in a direction to kind of affect policy and procedure of how the government enforces, if we do find a trailer on the side of the road and it's not parked in a zone that's designated for overnight parking, how do we have our police officers interact with that person, especially if we don't have anywhere to offer them to go? And that's the same thing for shelter. Like, how can we take people's places where they're sleeping at night and tell them to go somewhere else when we have nowhere else to offer them?
When you shut down certain human services and certain not human rights, but just necessities that people need on the streets, like a bathroom, a shower, a safe place to sleep.
There was a very significant legal decision in the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals in September of last year called Martin versus Boise. Essentially, the court found that unless a city can actually provide indoor shelter, they cannot enforce laws that criminalize homeless people for simply being out in a public space doing what they can't avoid doing, sleeping, resting, performing bodily functions. This decision from the Ninth Circuit is basically telling cities, you're going to have to find a different way to resolve this housing issue other than criminalizing homeless people.
So we are no longer, we used to use a penal code section, 647E, and if someone was lodging in an area, for example, they had their tent or their backpack, and you could tell that they were maybe sleeping in a park or outside in front of a business, first we would try to get them to move along, but if they just kept coming back and it was causing a disturbance to the community, we could issue a citation. And no, we're no longer doing that.
Some cities are flat out not enforcing those laws because of the Martin versus Boise case. Others are trying to find a way around it, and that's what's happening in Santa Cruz.
3 days. That's how long residents living behind the Ross camp in Santa Cruz will have starting Tuesday morning to gather their belongings and move somewhere else.
In Santa Cruz, what they're doing is they're saying, okay, well, we're not going to break up the Ross camp until we have shelter for everyone. But it's not shelter. What they're doing is that they've proposed, and they keep going back and forth, to set up a camp they had before, the 1220 River Street. Well, that's an open-air campsite. That's not indoor shelter. And our understanding of Martin versus Boise is that the shelter that the cities have to provide as an alternative to enforcing these laws has to be indoors.
I'm sure there's criticism, and yeah, obviously, I mean, when people are upset because their lives are being affected by something, when someone's been a victim of a crime that maybe a homeless person committed, or there's some kind of loud noise that happens, like for instance in the gully back here at nighttime, and the residents in Monterey that live in the apartments can't sleep because people are screaming or yelling or, you know, drinking at 2 or 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, they're irate with us for not solving the problem. We know we're doing what we can, and we don't take that personally because the problem's a lot deeper.
For right now, we're helping the people in the camp prepare their own lawsuit to try to prevent the cities of Santa Cruz from breaking up the camp before they have actual indoor shelter available, which so far they don't. And it doesn't look like they're going to create it without a fight.
I think the community needs to, rather than look at, oh, they need to criminalize homelessness, like a lot of people do, I think they need to look at it as, maybe I need to open up what's really going on. What can I do to solve the real root of all of this?
The homeless committee is going to be looking into what are our policies, who's being targeted, and how can we change those things so that it becomes more of an equal playing field and we can get people that need help, the help that they need.
You know, you don't have to ship people off. You just need to take a little bit more time.